Today on Wussy Movie Club, our Kinky season continues with the Wachowski sisters' 1996 erotic pseudo noir thriller, Bound.
Starring Gina, Gershon, and Jennifer Tilley, the film combines a steamy lesbian romance with a classic heist story. It has since become a queer cult classic.
Joining us today to break down the fashion, the herstory, and the queerness of Bound is queer writer, director, and producer Topher Cusumano.
Hi. My name's Violet. We heard you working in here, and I was just wondering if you'd like a cup of coffee.
An open invitation like Violet comes once in a lifetime.
What the fuck is...
Corky, this is Caesar Corky.
I thought... Fucking dark in here.
She's making an offer
Caesar's Mafia, huh?
I need your help, Corky.
only a fool would refuse.
It's over $2 million.
I don't consider myself to be an ethical person. Topher, hi. It's been a minute.
It's
How
been
are you?
a long, lonely minute without you.
I know, you've been so busy.
I've been a busy little queer, running around the country, making TV shows.
Your booty's on fire. You're just like...
It's okay. That's a HIPAA violation. Please don't talk about my recent diagnosis.
Oh, I see.
That's not your... Well, listen. It's been a long pandemic. No, I've been great. Well, we got right into the STIs. So I've been here less than a minute.
And yes to the STIs. I thank you for that.
No, it's been great. My production company, Daddy TV, is doing very well. We have 2 new shows coming to Apple TV, and that's through Out TV. So it'll be on Broadcasting Canada and the Out TV channel on Apple TV in the States. One is called Iconic Justice. It stars Willem, so it's like a queer Judge Judy. And then one is called Hot House, which is a group of sex workers and sex educators and sexy content creators from all walks of life competing to become the next queer sex symbol. And that has Cupcake and Tiffany Pollard and Matthew Camp. So that was a lot of fun to shoot. I think it's going to be a bit of a cultural reset.
Wow. What a cast. I'm already sweating. And it's not because there's a heat advisory for Brooklyn right now.
I mean, Cupcake and Tiffany. That is
It's
chaos.
the moment. And I will say our cast is more than half people of color. It is more than half trans and gender non-binary. So, we're really representing like the full intersection of the queer community. We have queer women on TV, which is like, I feel such a new thing in reality to have a space for queer women to tell their story, especially queer women of color. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to share it with everyone.
Awesome. And are there dates yet for either or not
So
necessarily?
yeah, you will be able to watch the first episode of Iconic Justice, I believe September 5th on the Out TV app on Apple TV. You can get more info on September 5th at iconicjustice.com. And then Hot House will come out before next year. So probably later in the fall, we'll have more information about a premiere. But stay tuned because it's going to be wild.
Well, we can't wait. We cannot wait. And, I guess in the meanwhile, I'm sure you've been, after working and all, have you watched anything recently that you're really into, something that you want to suggest to our listeners?
So I have been watching all of White Lotus. I recently named my queer bar trivia team the Connie Britton School for Girls.
Oh, wow.
Which I would attend.
I
Full
would
scholarship.
Totally attend.
Whose dick do I have to suck to get into that school?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been really, really loving White Lotus. I think it's a brilliant exploration of class and race in the hospitality industry. So suggest that. And there's a rimming scene.
Love incorporation of rimming more. Only more is what I want.
Interesting.
So Daniel, what are you watching recently?
So Miss Kainishian, she's back. And I watched a movie called Freak Orlando, which calls itself the camp version of the story. Yes. But the best way I can explain it is like Monty Python meets Holy Mountain meets Return to Oz meets the BDSM version of Judge Dredd. Like,
whoa,
it's all of those and everything, and it's a lot, but it's good a lot. So if you have a Kainishian subscription, watch it. It's
second all that.
It's bleh.
Yeah. No, it's like too good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just too good. Our brainwaves may be on the same frequency, I think is the right way to finish that sentence. Because I also have been enjoying my Charchillian Criterion Crayon channel. I realized it's actually been a full year since I've like really binged movies on there. So I guess August, just something about August where my mind's like, I need movies from the 50s, 60s that I don't know about. I've been really into Mikio Naruse, who is apparently like, it's so weird. People keep putting him like so low. Like there's Ozu, you know, there's so many like incredible Japanese directors, and he's just kind of like the one that never really broke the barrier. Like he's just stuck in Japan, and beautiful films, a lot of women-centered characters that are just like, get me out of these marriages, you know, just really been into that. I don't know. It's just art house.
It's like a whole art house moment.
I know, like we got like White Lotus and then us two like book nerds.
I feel like such a basic loser now, by the way. I would like to let all of your listeners know I also just watched Kiki's Delivery Service in Japanese. In Williamsburg.
Not the I watched subbed, okay? Just
no, I did watch. I watched it full subbed. I enjoyed. I cried. I had a real moment of transcendence through art.
Yeah, you must be going through something if you cried, because Kiki's like a transformative story. You're going through a transformation.
I am. Oh my god, this is like a tarot reading.
Is this a tarot reading? Which, okay, before we go too deep into all of that. We're going to have too much fun with this. Okay, so let's hop into the elevator up to our penthouse suite apartment.
Oh, hi, Corky. It's me, Jennifer Tilley.
I just needed you, Corky. So what is our... We're doing more Tilley. We need to do more Tilley. It's okay. There's going to be so much Tilley. It's going to be ridiculous. So what is our 1 to 2 minute hot take on Bound, 1996 film by the Wachowski sisters? What are our thoughts? Let's start with Topher.
Sure. So thank you so much for asking me back to do this episode, because when I was here last time, we talked about kinky films. And my hot take about Bound is that it is probably one of the most interesting pieces of queer erotic filmmaking ever made. I think it's a really interesting exploration of dom-sub dynamics that don't get weighed down by like the accoutrement of like leather play, or be like, it's actually about like power dynamics and power exchange for me. It is truly one of my favorite films ever made for lots of reasons, and I have notes. So you know what? Not only will I say that, but I'll cite my sources.
My dissertation.
And that's my take. All right? I'm also here to do Jennifer Tilley impressions.
Specifically.
Corky.
Corky. Hi, it's me, Jennifer Tilley.
Danielle, what are your thoughts on this movie? Was this your first time? Have you seen it before?
No, I've seen it once before. This is definitely my second Wachowski sister, right under Animatrix. This is a moment. This is really, and I back what Topher said in that I love this power play, and that the film really emphasizes the fact that with Corky, it's consensual and therefore it's okay, as opposed to Caesar and the others where it's not, so it's not okay. But the film conveys that idea without just blatantly saying that, and I really enjoy that. And also, I just love how, like, especially compared to the other films that we've discussed, where it's very much so a look and a nod and by the end of the movie, they're gay. It's like, no, by the fourth scene, they're having sex. Because we have to get to this psychological mafia thriller story. So we don't have time to like play around, which I enjoyed that change of pace. I really do. The only thing, which is controversial given you two, the baby voice really didn't do it for me a lot of the time. The baby voice, like, and the thing is, if she actually talked
Daniel,
like that,
that's
I wouldn't
just
say
her
something.
voice.
Okay, but there were scenes where she wasn't doing it. Like at the very end where she's fighting with Caesar, she wasn't doing it. So I'm
there
like,
is a purpose.
Sure, there's levels.
No, there's a
levels.
purpose. She just to chime in here, but Jennifer Tilley would put on a higher pitched tone to soothe the room of people, to control it, and whenever she was herself, it was like 10 octaves lower.
Yeah, I will.
So it was a character choice to play with her voice.
The moments that affected me more was the very beginning where she's trying to be all like flirty and sexy with Corky, and I'm like, it's. Girl, after a while, I became accustomed to it, but there were some moments where she would do it a little too much, and I'm like, no, girl, like, so that was my only thing.
I feel that, and I won't interrupt yet, but I want to get back to that point because I feel that, but I think it also plays into like the fact that it's erotica. Like, I think the fact that, like, she puts on this camp voice makes it so much more of a role play.
I can accept that it turns on Corky. I'm just, for me, I'm not interested in watching y'all's, like, sexy...
It's not getting you wet. No, that's fine. And we appreciate that boundary, Daniel.
I also saw in Jennifer Tilley, you know, like this like character like evolvement. Like she thought she could treat Corky like any of the other guys with her whole like cutesy baby voice act. And then she realizes like, oh no, I could be real with you. It was like around the like actual sex scene in the bed, I feel like, is when everything changed. Like before that, she really treated Corky in like the same way she would Caesar. But then like after that.
The moment I noticed that it wasn't a problem was when they were discussing the semantics of the heist. When they're like in the room and they're talking about it. She sounds like a normal person, but she still has the voice. And I'm like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. And so like for me, this movie is something that I absolutely just adored. You know, it was a movie that I have loved since high school, college. It was a movie that followed me through the years. And it's mainly because it actually succeeds in its queer storytelling. Like I leave it much happier knowing that this movie is created. Like a lot of queer movies are made and it ends and you're like, oh my God, like my soul, like, and like, or it just doesn't end the right way, or we went through all this turmoil, and it's like, we went through all this turmoil, and it's like, bye, like, it was just so exciting how happy and succeeding the women are in this film. I mean, even more so than a movie like Carol. Carol, we spent like 2 hours of just sads, and we all know how much I love Carol. It's just like this movie brings it like to another level. It's something that we still haven't seen enough of in queer storytelling. And I mean, I'm just obsessed with the two of them.
Yeah. And it's like, let queer women make movies.
Right.
And I think that we'll have that more. Like the Wachowskis are queer women, but I also think that the real unsung hero of Bound is Susie Bright.
Oh, for sure.
So Susie Bright was a story consultant for the Wachowski sisters on this film. She is a sex educator. She is a queer woman. She is the creator and editor of Best American Erotica. So if anyone ever went to the library to take out dirty stories, you probably have Susie Bright to thank for that. She's also one of the first mainstream writers to cover the sex industry in mainstream periodicals. So she started writing about porn and sex work in Penthouse. She then went on to do that work for other mainstream publications. She is deeply, deeply influential in the sex positivity movement and in the queer theory movement and in queer sex education. She is actually the woman that Corky hits on in the lesbian bar, who's in like
in the beginning
the dominatrix outfit, and then the cop comes over like the real stud, and she's like, when you're tired of Cagney and Lacey, come find me. So Susie Bright choreographed all of the sex scenes, so that's why it is actual queer sex that you're seeing. But I also just think that, again, going back to this idea of happiness and like how consent works in this film is really interesting, to Daniel's point. And I'm not taking anything away from the Wachowski sisters because they were smart enough to bring in someone like Susie Bright, but I really do believe that behind the scenes, it was her really making sure that those nuances were captured in such an interesting way. And if I could just say one more thing about the fingering scene, like the famous sex scene that we all talked about, that first sex scene. So in the original edit, which you can now watch on Amazon Prime, so it's probably the one that we all watched most recently, Jennifer Tilley is actually the top in the sex. But in the original release, do you know that they cut the sex scene by about 2 minutes so that you did not see Jennifer Tilley's hand?
Yes.
Like entering Gina Gershon, because it would have got them an NC-17 rating, which I think is really interesting.
That 2 minutes alone would have given them an
that 2 minutes alone,
NC-17
and
rating.
it has everything to do with the fact that you're actually watching a real queer sex act, which I love. But also what I love about that moment, though, is that it shows Jennifer Tilley as the femme is not the submissive in this power dynamic. And even when it becomes full-blown sexual and becomes a physical expression of those dynamics, she is still the one on top. So you could have a stupid baby voice and still be a dom. And that's really our biggest takeaway here, right?
No, for sure. And I think it's really interesting that like Corky, you know, has the image of someone you think is dom and like, but at the end of the day, it was Violet that is approaching Corky, the one that's aggressively trying to get Corky in bed, you know?
Oh, yeah. And how many subs do you know that like flag butches fuck in the streets? Like that's such a common thing in the queer community. Most leather pups I know look like they could kick your ass. It's like you throw a tennis ball and they run away.
Well, Susie was important because the script had literally nothing involving how sex is actually done between two women. So Susie was really important. Daniel, what are your takes on the portrayal of lesbians in the film?
I really just like it. I feel like this movie was cognizant of a lot of it's interesting because we talked about a lot of situations in the past of our last season where it's like you watch it and you're like, they don't like each other. But I 100% believe that these two like each other, and it's because it's not only that it's sexual, but there's like, for me what made it queer is the like, I feel like gay people more than straight people, we have this thing where we kind of blur the line of what is just sexual relationships, what is romantic relationships, what is like friendships, to where a casual hookup can also turn into a conversation about life and like a huge connection. And we see that even from the very beginning that these two are like really blurring the lines even before it's necessarily appropriate for them to be at that level. And so if you look at it through a straight lens, it's like, they're moving way too quickly. They are way too close to each other, way too fast. But if you are queer and you have been in sexual situations with other queer people, you're like, this, yeah, yes,
no,
actually,
it feels very real.
Uh-huh,
yeah.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they're going to run
I
away
love
together.
that thought,
Of course,
actually.
yeah. And,
yeah, you're right. People could watch this movie just real quick. People really would watch this, especially like hetero cis people would watch this and go, oh, like, it would never be that quick. No, it would be that quick.
It'd be quicker, actually, but okay.
Well, and it would be quicker because, and I so agree with you, Daniel. That's such a fucking brilliant point. But I also think that says something so deep about queer survival that both of these women at the beginning of the film are really at such a strange transitional moment. And I think when you do find other queer people in those times in your life, especially when there's so much danger, it does become this rush to survive and to protect each other in ways that I'm not sure straight people can fully comprehend.
Right.
What I was going to say in regards to the whole like top bottom thing is that I definitely feel like that was purposeful in how they presented it as well, because they bring up conversations like, oh, you're with a straight man. And it's like, yeah, because we all pick our ways in life. Get out my business. And like, they don't judge her for it. And then also, it would have been so, I feel like in general, what makes it queer for me as well is that I feel like when it comes to queer men, I should say, we care more about the whole top, bottom, whatever thing than queer women. Whereas this film is communicating verseness to me in that they both are actively participating in the crimes. They're both actively participating in the sex, to where one time, for me at least when I was watching it, I didn't think, oh, she's the top, she's the bottom. I thought, she's gonna top this time. she's gonna top next time. So
I had that thought too.
To me, that's what made it, especially since she kills the husband as opposed to having her new GF do it for her. It's like no.
I mean, like such an iconic scene. Like,
you don't know shit.
You don't know anything. Yeah. I mean, like this movie, what I really appreciate is the use of the the other plot lines. Like it was, I'm kind of tough on like mafia type movies. I always think it's like so easy to make a mafia movie, just like guns and cars and like Italian people. But like this movie had a lot of, I don't know, accuracy and like stakes. The stakes were so high.
Yeah, the movie kept getting upper and upper and upper to where you're like, your heart is there with the heist.
It's racing.
To where like once Caesar changes the plan, you're like, which I'm not gonna lie, I was low key upset about because he killed my husband, Christopher Maloney. So I was like a little bit like, why did you have to make me watch that violence?
He had a good death. He had a good death. One in the leg, down on the ground. It was good. I want to ask in the sense now of the kinky aspect of this movie. I think it's interesting because it's called Bound. There's very little of bound, like bondage happening. It's more metaphorically the fact of being so bound between one another, unless, you include the fact that someone is actually gagged and bound in the closet in the end. But that's just one moment.
I mean, the beginning opens on a sex toy.
It opens on the well, it looks like a sex toy, but it's actually something else in the closet. Yeah. It literally looks like a dildo.
But they know what they were doing.
That.
They knew what they were doing.
But I was thinking, like, this movie does an interesting job of really making quirky this, like, there's something very moist and wet and very arousing, but with Caesar, there's something very hard and difficult. So did we feel these vibes? What was the kink aspect that we got out of this movie?
First of all, your description really turned me on. I want to start there.
Okay. Wow, thanks so much for that.
You're welcome.
No, I feel that. I think I mentioned this earlier to one of Daniel's points, but for me, the joy of Bound and what I think Susie Bright, as someone who writes both erotica and nonfiction about sex, probably added to this somewhat on the back end, is that for me, the whole film really does feel like a porn, right? Like, yes, the stakes are so high, but they are so obscenely dramatic, and you do have this sense that like everything will probably work out and that the sexual stakes are equal to the mafia stakes, that those two things are working in tandem in the same way you would have in an erotic novel or like an erotic film or even like a straight up like Cinemax shitty porn, right? Like the sex has to be equal to the rest of the stakes because that's why your audience is watching. So for me, that is what I love about Bound, is that it takes the mafia film but does sort of put a queer lens on it, so that even the moments with Caesar and Johnny, the Christopher Maloney, I think that there is like a sexy banter there, right? Like there's
Caesar
a lot of
so wanted him.
Right?
So badly.
I mean, no, it's
so
there.
badly.
So for me, that's the kink. Like the kink is more like about the role play of it and like imagining yourself as a queer person. Like it's like you get to escape your shitty life, whether that's like I just got out of jail or I'm in a bad relationship, and I get to run away with this hot piece that like makes me happy, and we just got $2 million. Like it is gay camp porn.
Scorsese could never
and would never.
Constantly coming for Scorsese.
You know what? I appreciate you for knowing that's actually very true.
Like, all the time.
I'm very tough on him. I'm sorry. I
totally agree with Topher.
I'm not sorry.
So, I mentioned in a previous episode the anime Kakegurui, which is about lesbians who play poker, and a huge sentiment they make clear all the time is that they are turned on by the concept of putting everything on the table and possibly losing it. And I think it's the same thing here, where both of these ladies, because like, there's multiple scenes where Corky like is talking to herself saying, I could just go. I could literally just take the money and go. I could just get myself out of that. But it's like almost she's turned on by the concept of I could die. I could lose everything. I could go back to jail. And same with Tilley, where it's like she dips her toe in all of these people's lives, almost like, and they make it clear with like the other guy with Shelley, they make the comment that she almost wants to get found out. She almost wants to get discovered. So I think the erotic kinkiness of it is that both of these women are just really into putting everything they own on the line and seeing if they like, it's a gamble, essentially.
Right. I just think that, there's some pet peeves I have with this movie that I want to share with the two of you. There's just a few pet peeves that I have, and I want to hash it out. Okay. Number one, I don't understand how they didn't leave the phone off the hook, okay? First of all, she knew the walls were thin. She knew he'd call again, and somehow she left it ringing. I was like, is she trying to get caught? Is she trying to have Caesar hear it over the wall? Like, that was number one. And number two, I love how Corky is like, I won't get caught. Don't worry, I'll never get caught. And she literally is in the apartment for not more than 1 second, and she's caught. So I don't know what the fuck was going on.
That scene was so funny because Tilley's like, okay, but what if? She's like, no, don't worry about it. And she's like, but what if, though? Like, what are we going to do? And she's like, no, it's not a problem. It's like,
I know, that's what I'm saying. And then,
but that's
not even
queer chaos. If the three of us right now decided to have an orgy and steal $2 million,
I'm dead.
I'm sure my dumbass at some point would be like, "No, I got this. Everyone, I have this. Just let me live right now. I have this."
If the three of us decided to do this, I feel like we get caught before it even started because of the yelling in the apartment next door of the details of this. Just like, no, shut the fuck up.
The walls
no,
are too thin for John's big ass laugh. He would get us 2 seconds. They would get us caught.
Yeah, and that's my thing too, is that they go like, oh, you can hear everything, we're basically in the same room, but they just blatantly talk about these plans, and Caesar's just like, whatever, just chilling on the couch, just whatever.
I know it. And when Caesar first sees Corky thinking he's a man, she's a man, it's too dark in here, apparently. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Great. I love it, though.
I think that moment does speak to, and look, Gina Gershon is not selling that androgyny necessarily, but I think in the script, and again in my bound fantasy, Corky is actually like androgyny, like non-binary maybe, or really is serving that moment of being misgendered, and like totally. To me, that's an empowering moment for the character too, to be like, yeah, you think I like have big dick energy enough to fuck your broad, and that's kind of hot for a queer person too sometimes, maybe.
In my opinion, everything from the Wachowski sisters before coming out and post coming out has at least one thing to be like, ooh, what's gender? The only thing, like, everything that they put out even before they came out was telling you guys, hey, this ain't it. So I feel like that was purposeful. I think she was casted because she looked like that, and that scene was put there because of what you're describing.
I find it very interesting that Linda Hamilton was supposed to play Violet originally.
She was.
Linda Hamilton is the Terminator. She's Sarah Connor. So originally, Linda Hamilton was going to play Violet, and Jennifer Tilley was going to play Corky.
No, I
know.
Don't accept that.
I know, I'm so confused and she was like, I want to do something different. And I was like, okay, well, anyway, so then Linda ended up dropping out, and then Gina walks in, and Jennifer was like, yeah, I realize now that Gina's a better Corky. So...
I kind of want to hear her do those voices now in like Corky's hard lines where she's trying to be like, all women are the same.
I can't imagine it.
Like,
I don't know.
That would be everything.
But
just like all women are the same. The one thing I hate the most is a woman who complains about having sex. Like, that would just be.
And the only other backstory I do also know about this movie is that the Wachowski sisters were using this movie as a, they've claimed it's simply. They call it simple. I don't think it's that simple, but they called it a simple production and directing style because the two of them are just trying to get their, everything they wanted to prove they can make The Matrix, literally, was what they're saying. And this was a movie that they didn't care too much to make it like something so crazy. It was just to be like, we could direct a high budget movie. And apparently no one wanted to give them the money unless Corky was a man. Until they met Dino De Laurentiis. Dino, he's the godfather of Hollywood. I don't know who Dino is, but apparently Dino was like, I'll give you money. Gave them $6 million. And they made Bound. So
okay. That makes
sense. It's also like it would be a great stage play, right? Like you could really reduce that entire story to the two apartments.
With songs or without songs?
I mean, I think it would be just a great straight play, but I mean, I could see it as a musical.
Do you want like a sex scene that's like singing and then halfway into the high note someone starts moaning?
Well, now that's my personal kink, Daniel, and now you're bringing up my business.
I didn't realize musicals were your
bringing up my business here.
Oh my!
Can you imagine? What if my kink was doing the Jennifer Tilley voice during sex?
It might be mine in the future.
We're not having the orgy that turns into a bank robbery. I would tell on both of you if you were doing the voice.
No.
Are we all Tillies? Are we all Tillies here, or are some of us Corkies? I love how we just completely forgot that it's Violet and Corky, but it's fine. Are we all Tillies, or are we Corkies? Daniel's like, I know what these two are going to say, so I'm just going to hop in here and say what I think.
I think I am a Tilley with a Corky rising. In that, like, I am Corky at the moments where she's like, I could literally just get all this stuff and leave. Only I would have actually left. So given what actually happens, I can't claim her. But Tilley actually does do the stuff, so I feel more of a Tilley.
Well, here's the best way to figure it out. If you were to stand in an elevator, what would you do? Okay, I don't know who that is, but that's such just a baby.
If I was in the elevator, I would have just said I wanted to have sex in front of the husband. So
if I were in the elevator, I would have tried to blame someone else for my farts.
Ugh.
Oh my.
So you're a Gino.
Well,
also, major shout out to Joe Pantalonio for Caesar. Totally, I have to admit, for like a character in a movie that's heavily queer, kudos. I mean, I really liked his portrayal. I thought it was very, very fun.
I liked it.
He was psycho. When he was trying to like pretend to be Johnny, like what would Johnny do? Until he's in the corner like, you're scaring me, Caesar.
Right.
Yeah, I think even the men knew enough to play the camp of those scenes, right?
Right. No. Joe and Christopher were like having their best lives ever. Like they were having their best lives ever in this movie.
Oh, and also shout out to the guy Sheldon, who dies, in it, who like visits Tilley. Apparently he actually hit his head and got really hurt on set. So when he's lying there and they're kicking him, if you notice really closely, they're actually not going as hard as they were earlier because the guy actually was having a mild concussion. Not to laugh. That's not funny.
For the art, you do it for the art.
So Daniel, let's get into the fashion.
Okay. Simply put, Bound walked so that the Matrix could run.
Yes.
Everything you see here is just like the baby diet version of the Matrix, which I find to be very interesting given the fact that they in the movie in leather almost as a communicator of this is the prequel to the Matrix, which personally I kind of like to believe based on how they're dressed that Bound is the spiritual prequel to the Matrix. But Corky is giving you plumber, butchcore, but like fun in late 90s and seductive. And I love the color palette with both of them in that it's these grays and these blacks, but we have the pop of red. And I really love how Violet's character has that like traditional she almost to me felt very role play in that she's dressed like a traditional kind of housewife type. But something about it is always very leaning towards sexual. Whether it's like how she has her boobs or like the size of the dress, the cut of the dresses. Everything about it is very, very sexual, especially when she's around the men until the very end where, again, she's just kind of chilling in her leather jacket and her glasses having her best life. So, yeah, honestly, every single look you see here was in The Matrix. The red dress is the red dress from The Matrix. The jackets are the jackets from The Matrix. The tank tops are the tank tops from The Matrix. So I kind of love it in that sense. And yeah, I mean, I love the styling of The Matrix. I love the styling here. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Yeah, Tilley as the housewife reminds me of, like, what if Edie Falco as Carmela on The Sopranos was more...
I'm dead!
Like, what if though? I also love how the design, you're right, you know, they say that a lot of even the apartment style, the color scheme of the greens and the blacks, it just, like, transcends over to The Matrix.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Truly
the only
a
thing
spiritual.
Is that this one has a little bit more red than The Matrix does.
Yes.
Like in the apartments and, like, little pops here and there, but for sure, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and like that, like, apartment that Corky's in with that wallpaper, that's so nice. Right. There's something about it that reminds me of, like, the empty apartments that, you know, Morpheus is standing in or something.
Right.
Damn, what a fun
prequel,
movie!
I'm telling you.
I know. Also, I don't know if this is actually a true fact, and if it's not, we can cut it out. So let's give some space between and after in case it's not real or not. And I'm sure John will pop in and go, it's not. Or it is. But apparently, Jennifer Tilley's character Violet was an inspiration for someone's first name, and her last name is Wachowski. Given that our listeners are Atlanta-based, it'd be fun to know that fact.
It would make sense.
I think so too. Also,
I mean, even if it's a lie, who cares? We could start that rumor.
Well, because the way that Violet does her face is very similar to like Jennifer Tilley in this movie, but like a lot.
Yeah,
I would say.
I could see it.
The eyebrows, the lips.
I would Topher though. Let's just start a rumor.
Yeah, I don't think we have to find out if it's true.
Spotted Violet Wachowski, inspired by Jennifer Tilley in Bound.
Okay, so what are we feeling about this movie? What number are we going to give it? Let's, give our closing case on the film, what we love, what we don't. Let's start with you, Daniel.
I'm going to give the movie a high 9.4. I think visually speaking, excellent presentation. Acting-wise, knocking it out of the park. And I feel like plot-wise, it flows seamlessly. It's the perfect amount. Everything's great. Like I said, the voice for me was just a little grating. And even though that's one thing, it took a lot out. That took 0.6 out. So if you want to blame someone, blame the direction or blame Jennifer Tilley. But 9.4 is still good. I could have went lower.
I will never forgive you, Daniel, for this kind of treatment of my voice.
Topher, what are you thinking?
I give it a hard 10. It is truly one of my favorite movies. I'm not as adverse to the baby voice. And yeah, it just makes you want to be like sexy and like dangerous. And who doesn't fucking love that?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Also, Jennifer, her in Bride of Chucky and all the Chuckies is also just like a cherry on top of the cake when I think of her. But yeah, I don't know. This movie for me is like a 9.9. It's 1.1 away from the 10 because I just don't believe the phone and I don't believe she'd get caught 0.1 second in the apartment. I couldn't, like, I remember when I first saw this and I was like so mad. I've obviously gotten over it to this point, but like, I remember just being so mad. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I would argue that extra 0.9 has only came back around after the many decades from first seeing the movie. If you asked me years ago, I probably would have said 9. But we're at 9.9 now. I'm slow. Maybe one day it'll be a 10. I'll just black out whenever those scenes happen. I'll black out. They never happened. It's okay.
I'm dead.
So I feel that. The phone, I can't. And you know what? People are unhooking the phones left and right in that movie. Caesar had an offer. I just don't buy it.
No, I know, but it's like you don't really screw the pizza boy, right? Like once
Johnny,
you go into the movie,
we have to listen. If we don't have that scene, then we don't get the uppity. We don't get it doesn't get raised. The stakes don't get raised. We need something to move this along.
As I said in the beginning of this episode, I don't see myself as a ethical person, but I am fair.
I'm trying to seduce you because I want to.
Look, it could have been lower. Anyway,
I saw you in the elevator.
It's too bad my apartment building doesn't have an elevator. I would constantly just be standing in it thinking, "Are you my corky?" Okay, I can only imagine. Today on 1010 Win News, someone is in an elevator just stalking people.
You're gonna get arrested for harassment.
I know. That's why it's not about to do that.
Comment from Jennifer Tilley tonight at 11.
I don't condone. Okay, anyway, before we have just too many Jennifer Tilley impressions, thank you, Topher. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I know how much you love Bound. And remind us again of your 2 shows before we wrap up.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. We have Iconic Justice coming September 2nd to Out TV on Apple TV. And then we have Hot House coming later on this year, probably later in the fall. And that's going to also be on Out TV on Apple TV. So check us out, please. You can also follow me on Instagram at TOPHCUS. That's Toph Cus. So send me your best Jennifer Tilley impression. I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I'd love to hear everyone's Jennifer Tilley impression. Also, if you have a Fire TV, they do have an Apple TV app, and you can always get everything you could from an Apple TV on that app. So, like, you don't have to have an actual Apple TV to get this. But yes, and thank you, everyone. And Daniel, let's all say goodbye.
Bye.